Welcome to I Plan for Marriage, the podcast, a space where love meets preparation. I'm Martha Brown, a marriage planner and chaplain.
And I'm Vivian Vi Baldwin of Designs by Lady Vi, Martha's co-host. I'm a wedding planner and designer and educator. Together, we'll guide you through the two most important journeys, building a strong foundation for your marriage and navigating the ins and outs of wedding planning.
We'll share the conversations you should have before saying I do and the details that matter when planning the celebration of your love.
Whether you're engaged, newlywed, or dreaming about your big day, we're here to give you the insight, encouragement, and a touch of inspiration. Let's get started.
Hi, my name is Martha Brown.
And I'm Vivian Vi Baldwin. And today we have our special guest, Robert Williams, who is the president and founder of Williams Marketing, who's going to help us dive specifically into the importance of money and financial management in relationships.
So, Robert, please take a moment and share with the I Plan for Marriage podcast community a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you. I am president of Williams Marketing. Been in business since 2020. And we own a small financial services provider firm where we specialize in financial services to individuals and businesses around life insurance and health insurance and mostly money and management. Okay. I've got my bachelor's degree from North Carolina Central, my master's from Central Michigan, but I also went on and got my Series 7, Series 65, which gave me the opportunity to do stocks and securities and things like that. But most importantly, since we're talking about money, my wife and I, we've been married for 39 years. And many of the things that we are talking about is just the lived experiences. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I can share with our plan for a marriage community is that lived experience.
So Robert, with money still being a leading cause of separation in relationships due to income-related issues like debt, overspending, or different financial visions, how can a couple begin an open and transparent conversation about their money values?
I think the biggest thing is to have the discussion. Money is the major cause of divorces, and just having an open and honest discussion around money. But this is what I found. I found that it's not just a discussion of money. It's getting to the root cause, your understanding around money. I think that's the biggest piece. One of the things I've learned as a high performance coach is that it's good to understand why we do what we do. And when we look at somebody that's not doing what they're supposed to do, many times we think it's an additional knowledge. But it's not. It's what are the interferences that they're encountering to prevent them from doing what they should do. I give you a good example. When I was trying to lose weight, I read all the books. I knew what to do, but I didn't do what I knew what to do. So until we get to those interferences about why am I not doing what I'm supposed to do, we don't change behavior. So I would say it's asking the question around money. What's your perspective of money? And then why do you have that perspective?
Okay. What do you think creates the fear from a person even asking that question of their partner?
I think it's transparency. I know early on, one of the things that I tell any young couple, and I've got a lot of nieces and nephews that just got married, one of the things I share with them is transparency is important. When my wife and we got married, that night, we said that we would not take our conversations outside of our marriage because only we can resolve that issue. And I think from that commitment, that was the foundation for a long-term relationship. Okay? Why are people afraid to talk about it? Embarrassment. Just not understanding. A lot of times we are afraid to show our vulnerabilities, especially as men. We don't want to show our wives that we're vulnerable. But when we made that commitment, it allowed me to really come to my wife and really talk about those things. So fear of failure, fear of not being vulnerable, I think that's the root cause. But that's the most important piece, is that transparency piece.
Right.
It is so important. I give you a good example. When we got married, I came from a family of 11 children. My father was the breadwinner. And my wife came from a family of 4 children. And her father was the breadwinner. And our perspective around debt was different. Our perspective around paying bills was different. You know, I thought a bill wasn't due until it was 45 days late. She thought a bill was due when we got the notice. So just little things like that, just really talking through those things. I call it merging together to make it successful. So I think transparency is the key, but a lot of people are so reluctant to do it, especially men.
Right. Kind of ties a little bit into my next question, Robert. With long-term relationships that may have had an in-depth conversation already, right? But there's often times where common expenses that couples still fail to share with their partners, such as money given to family members, or perhaps they begin gambling and small, important, not important amounts, but then it leads to more of larger amounts that they're trying to hide from their significant other because they feel that their next big win is right around the corner. So they keep, again, these things secretive, right? Why is it important for them to get out of the fear of not sharing these things and still share it, even though they know that their partner will probably be disappointed in them?
Again, it's transparency. We've got to drive to transparency. I've got to be willing to share it, and my spouse has got to be willing to hear it. Okay? So if my spouse is not willing to hear it, it encouraged me to either hide things or not do things. Okay? Again, I came from a large family, and I was one of the oldest ones, and we came up poor. I didn't get my own bed until I went off to college. So when I got out, I was still single, and I had the opportunity to really make a lot of money. And my goal was that my siblings wouldn't have to struggle. Okay, so when I got married, I was giving them a lot of money. Okay, if my wife and I didn't have that transparency,
Right.
I would have felt the need to go around and be secretive around that. But because we had that conversation, I was always asked. I've always asked, listen, my brother is struggling. My sister is struggling. My parents may be struggling. Are we willing or are we capable of sharing into that? And so, again, being willing to share,
Right.
and her being willing to hear is so important. And we were the same way with her family. If her family needed something, we would talk about it. She wouldn't go into the bank account and just take it and not hide it.
Right.
And I think from that point on, just being able to discuss those things really laid the foundation for a long-lasting relationship. I think at the core.
Right.
You know, you may not see it at the very beginning of a marriage, because we can become really good at hiding things. You know, we can really become good at hiding things. But as you go on, the other person really become good at finding things. So the quicker you can do that, the better. And I would recommend any couple to have those hard conversations up front. Because if you can have those hard conversations up front, you're ready for the long term. That's why you see so many marriages, I think, from my perspective, 20 years down the road, is because it took one person so long to find it. And now a 20-year marriage is dissolved because of lack of transparency.
Right.
You know, I've always been the one, and my wife as well, is I want to know the truth. I don't care how good, bad, or ugly it is. I really want to know the truth. Because if we know the truth together, we can work it out. So I think lack of transparency is
It's
so
the
important,
key.
and
Yeah.
being willing to hear, because if you're not willing to hear, I'm not going to be too enthused
Share.
about sharing. So, and that's the thing, and I think that builds relationships. And I think once you got a tight relationship, you can overcome anything. And my wife and I, we've experienced some difficulties, and I really do believe if it hadn't have been from those discussions up front, we wouldn't have gotten where we are.
The foundation.
The foundation, that's the foundation, transparency.
Mhm.
The other thing is align visions. If we align our vision, we talk about money up front. We talk about her perception of debt and finances. Once we truly get aligned, that changes behavior.
Mm.
Alignment will change behavior because we both bought into the vision. Compliance. If we talk about it, and I know that's what you expect, and I haven't aligned, but I'm complying, that encourages deceit. So it's very important to have those hard conversations and make sure those things happen. And not to just have the conversation, but check and verify.
Right.
Check and verify. And don't be afraid to find the answers, because I believe I much rather find the answers up front than get them 20 years down the road.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So were you speaking about having the conversation about your finances, did you use a budget as a tool? Was that a tool that you used to help to have the conversation?
We did. I think the biggest thing is, like I said earlier, if you're looking at increasing performance, 10% of that is I need to know information. I need to know how to do things. 90% of that is I need to deal with my interferences. I need to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I can't do what I know to do. So before you even have the conversation about the budget, you want to have a conversation about money. What's your perception of money? How's your perception around debt? And then, if that's aligned, then now we talk about a cash flow, a budget. And that's the next thing. When we go do financial workshops to churches and the individuals, we talk about the budget and the cash flow, but we talk more about the attitudes and behaviors, that 90%, that really prevents us from doing what we're supposed to do. So before we do that, we talk about what is your perception of money? How do you feel about debt? How do you see money? Do I see money as making me or buying me things? So things do I see things as making me who I am? Or do I see money as a tool? If I see money as a tool, my behaviors towards money will be different. So just really having to understand it.
Right.
And that prevents people from buying things to really impress other people that doesn't even matter.
Right.
So, and it's good in a relationship to see, is your partner about things? If that is, we need to have a discussion. We need to really have that discussion. And once that's in place, let's put a budget. Now you get to the cash flow. You can get to the budget and say, listen, you like nice clothes, right? So how much are we gonna contribute to our budget to clothes? So we can keep that in our perspective.
Right.
I may like to go out to eat. So how much of our budget are we gonna do that? We're gonna put to that. But having those conversations up front is so important, because those things will really help you lay out a solid budget. But putting a budget together without the attitudes and behavior behind it is just like writing a plan on a piece of paper and just throwing away. And we go to people all the time. We talk about budget. Are you following the budget? And I say, no, it's not the budget, it's the attitude.
Right.
The thought behind it. So before we get to the budget, I would talk about the mindset. I was telling Vivi earlier, we had this was an older couple that came by the office. They were in their 50s, and they wanted a budget. So we sat and talked about the budget, laid it out, but then we talked about the mindset, who's managing the money. And this guy being 50, he grew up in a household where the man managed the money. They're in charge. The man's in charge. I manage the money. But as we were talking, and the wife started really giving feedback, he want the best money manager. He want the best money manager. And therefore, so we talked about, why don't you let her manage the money? And he was saying, well, so that's when you really got to the root of it.
Mm-hmm.
A man's supposed to manage the money. I said, where did you get that from? That's where it was in my household. I said, that's where it was in my household as well. But my wife is a better money manager than I am. And as a unit, it's about the whole.
Right.
The whole is bigger than the individual pieces. So we've got to really come together and say, okay, what do we got to do to make this thing right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the budget, we talk about that, but we talk more about what's your attitude? What's your thoughts around the money? Because that will make the difference.
And another thing that you said, are we capable?
Right.
You know, so I think that was definitely, I wanted to make sure I highlight how you had said that, because I think that's very important.
It's very important.
You know, regarding, are we capable of doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Because that forces you to look at the numbers.
That's right. That's right. And then if you find that your partner is not capable and it's not major enough to walk away, then you've got to force yourself to put systems in place to at least protect yourself. And how do we do that? We say, okay, we're going to have a central budget for the bills, because I don't want the household to be impacted.
Right.
So you've got to contribute to that. You can have your own bank account to do what you want to do. And I'll have my own. That's when it really, you know, you don't have to separate.
For the clothes and the food.
That's right. Clothes and the food. One of the things I found in my budget, my wife and I, we went through this process, and I thank God this is the lived experience. I love Starbucks coffee. And at the time, I was going to Starbucks every day. I would go in the morning, and I would go in the afternoon. At the time, Starbucks, a venti was $2.50. And I would go in the morning and afternoon. To me, it was $2.50. So when we did this budget, I said, well, I'm managing. I know. We got to find out where all this money's going. So she said, okay, $2.50 in the morning, $2.50 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. And at the end of the month, we realized, I was spending $100 in coffee every month. So those are the conversations. That's what a budget do for you. You know, we teach people to look at budget like you look at cash flow, like you look at if you're in the garden. Have you ever been out watering your lawn and you hook the hose up to the water and you pull it out to the garden to water? And if the water you got the water on. If the water's not coming out the end, what do you do? What typically you do? What you tell somebody to do? I got the water on, but it's not coming out the end of the hose. You start walking down the hose.
Where's the hole?
Where's the hole? Or where's the kink? I call them kinks. Where the kinks?
Okay,
Get the kink. Get the kink out of the hose. And as you get the kink out of the hose, the water begins to flow. And when the water begins to flow, you got cash flow out the end. But in order to increase that, you got to, where's the kink? The kinks are our debt and our expenses. So as you work on those things, it creates the cash flow. And now, if there's cash flow, everybody in the house is happy because of cash flow. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Better.
During engagements, couples often determine a budget of the amount that they are going to spend on a wedding itself, but often get caught up in the excitement of the day and the choices offered, and sometimes they overspend or they don't consider the money and expenses after the wedding. So, Robert, what should couples consider as a whole, specifically when creating a budget for their wedding?
And that's a good question. I think back when my wife and I got married 39 years ago, there really wasn't a budget about wedding. What I would caution any young couple that that's planning to get married is to realize that there's life after marriage. There's life after the wedding. And really keep that in perspective, you know. And I think a lot of times, like when we're talking about what are your perspective around money, a lot of it we do, and I see this as wedding. Now you may disagree with me. I think weddings are like us buying cars or clothes. Is we're buying it more for other people than we are for ourselves. Now we want our event to be nice.
Right.
But we really got to look at the perspective of who are we doing it for and why are we doing it. So again, before you spend, you want to have a conversation about the why. Why are we doing this here? What are the attitudes around that? Because those attitudes and those thoughts will eventually be the thing that make the decision.
Right.
So first I was thinking about who are we doing it for? Who are we doing it for? In that conversation, well, I want my friends to know. I want it to be nice.
Right.
So people can talk about, right there that you do want that, but that's probably should be secondary or third down the line. So really, why do you want to do? If you want to say this is a special day for us, and we're doing it for us to let the world know who we are, that's a whole different attitude. And everybody's on the same page.
Right.
I'm willing, it's about us. I'm willing to put my money in there too. So it's really about, before we spend, what's the mindset? I said, why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? So if that's a line, then do it. I will also, if you put the budget in place, stick with the budget and hold each other accountable. That's the other
accountability
thing.
part.
Accountability. If we agree to a budget and we're saying we're spending this here and I'm spending $100 on coffee, you gotta call me on it. Call me on it. I don't care how much more money I'm making, or if I'm working overtime, I'm still spending $100 on
Right.
coffee. So don't allow me to justify that because it's not in the budget. Those other things can be going towards savings or some other things. So just if you decide to do that, my question would be, really consider why you're doing it. And it's for you and your husband, do it. But if you say, man, I want to do it, I want it to be the baddest thing going,
Your perspective.
it's too expensive. And life after marriage, I like I say, my nieces and my nephews, they've gotten married, and they have a nice wedding. But after the wedding, they're crunched for money. And now you're together and you're talking about, why did we do that? And that thing, that initial thing after you get married, can set the stage of negativity that won't even give your marriage a chance.
Right.
So just force the conversation. I've got a good friend that he's 67, and he and his wife passed 2 years ago. He's getting ready to get married, and his wife said, "Listen, I want a big wedding. I want a nice wedding. I want a big one." So why we need a big one? Because I want my friends to come, I want my church family to come. And I said, "No, we're getting married. So we're not gonna do that. We're gonna call the priest here. We're gonna have it in our kitchen." But those are all right conversations, because I think it set the tone to have open conversations.
Right.
If you can disagree there, disagree before you get married. She can say, well, I think I want to be with. Now you may have to negotiate it, but at least be, just don't go along with it. When you go along
and then
with
regret
it,
after.
then you regret it afterwards. And that comes out in our attitudes towards each other. We can be laying in the bed and you sleep, but I'm thinking about, man, we just dumped this money on this wedding. So be willing to have the conversation up front so both people can sleep, if that makes sense.
It does.
You said something earlier about the fact that you and your wife agreed that your conversations would stay within your
Yes.
household.
Yes.
And so I'm just thinking in terms of money that, say, for instance, that person says, well, I want to have this big wedding. And you mentioned that someone should hold a person accountable, even if they have resources and they make more money, because the person could say, well, you don't have to pay for it.
That's right.
I'm going to go. My family is going to
Yep.
pay for it.
Yep.
I'm going to pay for it.
Yep.
And so that seems to set up a dynamic still that could be conflictual.
You are so right. You are so right. Early on in our marriage, if we got in a bind, we will work through that bind. It would be a last resort if I went to my family or she went to her father. And I think making that commitment, we may have to, but we never had to. But you know why? Because we were committed to not doing that. And I really do believe early on, if you can get that commitment, everything else will work out. It's so easy to say, my parents are going to pay for it. Yeah, but still, why are we doing it?
Right.
Why are we doing it? We're doing it for us. Okay, let them pay for it. So you're right. Right. The minute you invite other people in,
They feel entitled.
I paid for your wedding. You know, he couldn't pay for it. And now it's putting a different perspective in your mind about who you're marrying.
Right.
Let's not do it. Let's commit. We'll get there. But just be willing to get there up front. And I think couples, it's so hard. I think that's where we lose. They really lose. If you don't have the foundation of commitment, no matter if you have money or not, but if you got commitment to each other, man, you can do amazing things, man. You can make a way. You can make a way, man. But that's the thing. That's the thing. I got 2 daughters. I was telling Vic, I got 2 daughters that's really, they're doing well. They're professional. They're out there doing their things. They're single. And I was talking to them about, you may have grew up in a 2-family household, but dynamics are changing. Don't let your paradigm dictate where you are now, because things change. Things change. You know, so be willing to say, okay, that was then, but what does it look like for me? And once you decide what it looks like for you, it's gonna be yours. You're not living life. You really created your future. It's like 2 people getting married. Once you come up with a common vision, oh man, everybody buys in. So, but if you just got compliance, okay, your father, your parents got the money, I comply. But you don't have my commitment. I'm compliant. So don't allow us first to become, and then we can do everything else.
So, of course, money flow changes, right?
Yeah.
And there are financial increases as well as decreases, but there are also money decisions that can change with age,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Robert, what are some different financial conversations couples should explore and engage in based on their age?
That's a very good point. One of the reasons I said I used to do securities and investments, right? And one of the reasons I just got out of that whole field and started focusing on life insurance, because I knew the people that mattered the most to me in my communities, they weren't at the level to start doing large investments. So what could we put in place to stabilize, to give them a foundation if something happens, that family is okay? Young couples, the thing I will recommend, you're talking about as financials change.
Sure.
Young couples, as they begin to have children, and you want to create a vision that speaks that whether I'm here or not, the vision continues. So as a young couple, if I've got smaller children, I want to make sure I've got a system in place of insurance enough that if something happens to me, my babies can still go to college. I want to make sure that happens. And a lot of times couples come together and they start saving. And saving is good, you should start. But you want to look at if something happens before I save where I am, what happens to my family? So when we look at money and where we should be positioning at what age, early on, you want to lay a good solid foundation that if something happens to me, my family don't have to move.
Right.
My children, my babies can still go to college.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our car is paid for. And that comes with alignment.
Right.
Now, also in our financial workshops, we talk to men and we talk to couples. And you'll be surprised. It goes back to our mindset. The men will say, well, I don't know if I want to leave a lot of money back here. I don't know if I want to leave a lot of money. And therefore, it forces us to have a conversation. Not maybe in front of the wife, but one-on-one and say, why? Why wouldn't you want her to carry on her life? If your vision was aligned,
Mm-hmm.
you still want that to happen because it's a joint vision. But again, the mindset that we've got to change. I want to make sure that whether I'm here or not, the vision goes on. And with the wife as well. You know, something happens to me, I want to make sure that I've got systems in place where you can manage daycare. Because it goes both ways, because the couples are married now, so both are working. We want to look at if we lose each other, one of us goes, we want to make sure that we can continue. Okay? And then as you go, money changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as children get up, ours is 40 and 33. So now that concern ain't for us. Now our concern is, what do we do in our later age? So money starts to shift. Still, if something happens to me, can my wife still stay in the home? Can she still go on? Okay. The other thing is, as we get older, what happens to us when we pass us? I call that in the younger ages, I call that love and affection. Now, what kind of letter are we leaving back for our family? You know, if I can leave something back to my family, that if something happens to me, I got something in place that they can go on, that's a letter of love and affection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can say, man, Dad, I appreciate it. They not only mourn, but they know everything's okay.
Right.
So then as we get older, the one thing the older people need to realize is that as we accumulate our money, we still need to have something in place to make sure if something happens to us, we can be put away well. I call that dignity and respect. Many times we can live a long life, and at the end of our life, somebody else has got to determine what happens to me.
Mm.
And that's not, I mean, I could be
During
impacted.
mourning.
During mourning. I can impact millions of people. But at the end of the day, if somebody else has got to determine how I'm going to be put away, that's not dignity and respect.
Mm.
Okay. And as older couples, you want to start thinking about, because my wife and we're doing it. As older couples, you want to start thinking about my chances of getting disabled is almost as greater or greater than my chance of passing. So what happens if I get disabled? Do we have enough to keep me out of the nursing home? And if I go to the nursing home, then there's that Social Security check or whatever. The assets is going to be looked at. So you just really want to start shifting. And that's part of that continuous vision. You know, you start out long term, we're going to have a happy retirement, but what does the phases look like?
Right.
You know, it's like running a marathon. You know, you run it in the first 5 miles. What does it look like? First 10 miles, what does it look like? What does the 20 miles look like? But those are the two things I would recommend early on, having those in places and having that budget in place.
Okay.
And teaching your children.
So couples are getting married later in life. So what about those couples, those individuals who come to a relationship with all these assets and resources, what sort of conversation should they have? I know people are kind of on the fence about prenups, but what we looking at?
Martha, I've got my perspective, and there's the popular perspective. I believe in even if you marry older, there got to be a conversation up front. There got to be a commitment up front. Don't just say, okay, we're good. Tell me why we're good. Get the mindset. Because my friend, 67, he and his wife is talking about that. And they're talking about the prenup thing because both of them are bringing assets to the thing. And I told him, I said, man, I don't know if I would want a prenup. Because if I'm going into something, this is just me. I just believe if I got commitment up front, and I truly believe that we're committed up front, our commitment is going to keep us straight. Now, I know people change and things like that. We can deal with that down the road. But I just think when you put things like that in place, I think you're really setting yourself up. You're protecting yourself, but are you getting the whole person? It's almost like does that make sense? Am I fully committed? Am I fully committed? Now, there's different thoughts. I'm not saying that's the right thought, but the different thoughts around that. But I've just always been that if I'm in, we're in.
I imagine for some couples, if there are children involved, adult children in their assets, there may be conversations in addition to the conversation that the two people need to have to bring those adult children in, especially if there was a home involved, because sometimes the children want to make sure that if something were to happen to the spouse that is not their parent, that home or certain things that are that are precious to them, that those things are preserved.
We run into a lot of marriages that occur, and you got mixed families, and you got two sets of children. When we look at that, the way we manage that, we tell the spouses and the husbands to listen, because you've got the two sets of children, one way to manage that is through life insurance. To make sure, if you're trying to, what are you trying to leave them? Money or assets? If you're trying to leave them money, keep your money there. That's part of y'all's vision. But if you know children will come, get a separate life insurance policy. This is for my children, it'll be split up. This is for your children, and they be split up. And when it happens, you're gonna have a lot of infight. But you got to have those conversations, especially if you got heir property and things like that. That you want to make sure it stays in your family.
For those couples that are pro prenup, would you say kind of almost the same philosophy how you said in regarding over years things can change? Could they more approach it as a prenup and then identify in 5 or 10 years we'll revisit it and make adjustments and kind of maybe even continue to revisit it 10 more years? So then it's kind of like they feel safe at the beginning, and then when we both are showing a long-lasting commitment, and not
you own it. You own it. You own
So
it.
they're not fake.
right.
I'm thinking for 5 years till I get no money.
After 5 years, you can't do anything now. Yeah, that's a real good point. It's called check and verify. And there's nothing wrong with having that conversation up front. My whole thing is have the conversation up front. I'm feeling uneasy. We'll go into this thing, but we're going to look like this.
Right.
And now we can merge down the road, but at least have a conversation.
Right.
My biggest thing is it's hard to, I call it compliance and really being committed. It's hard to go in it when you got doubts in the back of your mind and you don't have systems in place to protect. So I agree with you. There's nothing wrong with proceeding. Check and verify. Check and verify. That's protecting you. And
they often reference, marriages or, any long-term relationship as a business decision
Yeah.
as well.
Mhm.
So in that perspective,
Yeah.
you know, prenup is,
Yeah.
is in protecting your business
Yep.
investment, as you
Mhm.
will, in the partnership. So
Mhm.
And to be transparent, I've talked to my daughters about that. They've got their own homes and they're not married. And we have this conversation. I said, Dad, you can say what you want to. We're going to take this approach right here. I said, well, you gotta do you.
mm-hmm.
But the main thing is just really
Having the conversation.
having the conversation. Many people don't have the conversation. They'll think it, but they won't have it. And I just believe transparent conversations will show you what you need to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, wow, we have had a wonderful discussion on this topic. And so, as always, we like to provide the Our Plan for Marriage podcast community some tips. So if you have any tips, resources that our community can tap into that you'd like to leave
Okay.
with them, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. We've got a lot of resources on our website, www.wms316.com. And there's free resources. It's around our budget sheets are up there. Our papers that we've written are up there. Our life insurance planning sheets are up there. So all of our resources there, and it's free.
Oh, wow.
It's really free to download. But if I could just leave one thing is just open conversations, no matter what, open conversations, and really going beyond your answer to get to the mindset. I think if we do that in all aspects of our lives, we'll be pretty successful. And being willing to accept what we see.
Well, great conversation and tools. Once again, didn't we experience that
Yeah.
today, Vivian? And I want to thank our guest, Robert Williams. You can find all his information listed at the end of this podcast. And we hope you'll continue to tune in and continue to learn with us as we learn about different things that we need to discuss and have those transparent conversations. And if you are having a challenge in having this conversation or any other conversation, I would encourage you to keep looking, because we have some courses coming up to help improve your communication skills. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again.